Okay, we've just completed our second project, the first cross of the set of horseshoes that I have. It is posted, it is up for sale, but in the meantime I still have another pile of free horseshoes here. So this pile is going to be our last cross. It's the one that I thought was going to be more difficult than the first one. And mainly that's because within this design you have to cut these horseshoes in half and then manipulate the shape of the half to get the design. So again, we're going to have to go through and clean all these up, get the nails out of it, get the mud out of this crevice here. So I'm going to get everything set up again and start getting these cleaned up. Alright, I've got everything set up. I'm going to be using the strong hand clamp and the vise to get these cleaned up and to get them shaped properly. I want to talk about this strong hand clamp a little bit. I didn't talk about it too much in the last video, but this is probably one of my favorite tools in the shop. It's really useful. It's got a lot of applications and it can really do a lot of things that other clamps out there can't do. So if you take a look at it, first off, we've got this step down here. And then we've got this magnetic V-block, or actually this one's not magnetic, but you can get them with magnet inserts on the inside. And so this can take the shape of angled pipe or angled bar or pipe and really get a strong clamp on the idle. Another thing you can do is you can take this off completely, and maybe you don't need this big step down here, and you just want a flat surface, so you can take it off and just use it just like most clamps that you would probably see. Another thing you can do is you can actually invert this and stick it on top. So now that looks kind of funny. So what would be the use of this here? Well, another neat thing about this clamp is that this end comes off too, and it also inverts. So it's got this little lock right here in place. So when you push this lock down, you can turn this around. And so now, if you needed to push something apart, you can now use this setup to spread two items apart. So again, this is a strong hand clamp, and they make great products. If you go to the channel Welding Tips and Tricks, Jody actually has a strong hand table, and he's got a lot of these type of tools and fixtures and clamps that he uses in his videos, and he does some really neat things with it. So he's got a lot more than what I have. I'm kind of envious of his setup there. But you can check his channel out and see some of the cool things that he's doing with the strong hand equipment. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started with cleaning these up. We've got 13 to do, and then we'll get them straightened out and ready to go. I really need to make a base for this, so that might be another shop project that I do here pretty soon. It wouldn't be very difficult, but you just need to cut out a plate for the base of this vise and then build a stand, and then somehow I have to think about how I can make that stand mobile so that I can utilize this vise a little bit better. So keep a lookout for that. That's something that I'm probably going to be doing as an added shop project. So if you want to see what I'm using here, it's nothing fancy. It's just a punch, or a scribe actually, that you use to scribe into metal and make little marks for reference marks. And then I've just got this wire brush here. It's got a wooden handle on it, and I'm using it just to tap on it because I don't want to use a hammer because I don't want to mess it up too bad. And this metal handle gives me enough force to get some of the hard stuff out without beating this up too much. Another thing you could use would be a little wire brush like this. You could put this on a die grinder or some type of a grinder, and you could really get in there and clean this out. But this wire brush is working pretty good, and I'm just going to go ahead and go with this. But there are more different styles of wire brushes out there that would be more effective to do this process. Okay, so that's a finished deal. I'll show you again, before and after. This one's still got a nail sticking out of it, and you can see that gets packed up really good. And I'm trying to make myself feel better and say that that's full of mud. But I think we all know what that's probably a combination of. But that's okay. I'll be sure to wash my hands really well after I finish with these. And you can see the inside of there is pretty clean, about as good as it needs to be for a project like this. All right, I've got 12 more to go. I'm gonna go ahead and get that knocked out. You don't need to see all 12 of them done. But then as soon as we get done there, I'll move on to the next step, which is going to be drawing the outline of the cross and then getting some of these cut. I have to determine how many of these are going to need to be cut in half, but that'll be the next step. We'll be cutting these in half. Okay, I've got all 13 horseshoes done. That was quite a bit of work. I've probably spent about an hour and a half getting all these cleaned up. I tried to get them aligned somewhat. They still got some more work to do as far as getting them straightened up properly, but if I had to do much more than this, I would probably want to invest in a sandblaster or some other type of tool to help me get this done a little bit quicker. So that was a bit more work than I expected. But we've got the set here. It's clean, it's ready to go. So I'm ready to start laying the design out on the table and getting the designs matched up as good as I can, getting things straightened out better, and just getting the overall look of what the finished the cross will look like. So here's a picture. I'll go ahead and post that up real quick. Here's a picture of the cross that I'm going to attempt to create. And you can see there, it's a little bit different design than the first one. So I'm going to go ahead and lay this out now, excluding the pieces that have to be cut in half. So if you notice in the picture, the focal point of the cross is 4 horseshoes that are pointing in opposite directions from each other. So the first thing I need to do is find 4 horseshoes that I think complement each other, that kind of look the same, and I'll start there at the center piece of the cross. So what I'm looking for is I want them to be about the same shape, the same size. If they've got marks in them, I want them to look about the same, have about the same wearness on them. But probably what's most important is the design. And every horseshoe has a different indention in here. So you can see this one here, it has a full indention. And we've got this one over here that's got a half indentation, or it's got a space in the center. So I'll let you see this up close. So you can see the difference there. You've got one where the indentation goes all the way around the horseshoe, and you've got one where it stops right here in the middle. And so that's a different style, it's a different look. So for the centerpiece, for the four main ones, I want to make sure that they look as similar as possible. So I think I found my top horseshoe, which will be this one. I've got my bottom horseshoe, which will be this one. And then I've got the center. Right now I've got 5. And so I'm trying to determine out of these 5, I've got to select 4. Another thing I'm looking at is the thickness of the horseshoe. So as horseshoes get worn, they become thinner. And so you want to keep that in mind too. Okay, I think I found the winners. So I'm going to go with these 4, and I'm going to set those up right here in the center. So when you set this on a flat surface and you feel one that's got movement like that, that means it's not completely straight. So this is one that I'm going to have to go back and straighten up a little bit more. And so you can see like this one, I can push on it and it really doesn't have much movement to it. So this one's not bad. Okay, so I got this far. I'm going to go back and reference the picture and see where the rest of them are going to lay out. Okay, I've got it all laid out here to the best that I can without cutting up the rest of these horseshoes. I'm going to go ahead and draw in where I think these sacrificial horseshoes will end up. So I'm going to cut these in half, and then one end of it is going to be welded in place on both sides. It kind of gives it a different design. It's still a horseshoe, but whenever you mix up the look of the horseshoe, it just gives it a different design, a different look. The only thing about this design that I'm not sure that I like is the length, the top of this cross. So it's kind of short, I think, and I think I might want to bring the length up a little bit. But I'm going to draw it in place and then take a look at it a couple times and see and determine if I like it or not. Okay, I've got everything drawn in place, so I'll let you take a look at it. So that is the overall design minus the half horseshoes that I need to cut and put in place. But you can see that they're drawn in there with the marker. And the question that I have is which way that and the decision that I have to make is the top piece. I'm not sure if I like it longer, and the way that the picture has it, it's actually tucked in like that. So when you look at that, I just don't know that that's quite long enough to look just right. People may think that designing a cross or building a cross is really simple, and they are pretty simple, but the geometry of the cross has to be right. And sometimes the arms will be too small and it won't fit the body, or the body will be too long and it won't fit the top, and vice versa. So I usually pay really close attention to the geometry and the symmetry of a cross before I build one. So after looking at it, I think I am going to go ahead and go with a slightly longer top, and I think it's going to look a little bit better. So that's it. I'll get the other horseshoes in the vise, and I will start cutting those to the correct length. Okay, I'm ready to start cutting these horseshoes up. The first two, I'm just going to cut those in half, so that's pretty simple to do. And then the last one, I'm going to have to determine the length because it's going to be a little bit shorter. I'll have to determine the proper length, and then I'll cut that length off the edges of the horseshoe. So I'm going to get this set up here in the vise at the proper angle so that I can get a good cut on it. Make sure it's in there pretty tight because you don't want that slipping on you when you're trying to cut on this. And just the key thing here is you just want to make sure you're getting right in the center of the bottom of this loop here. You want to be right in the middle of it. So what I'm going to be using to cut it is this Milwaukee Sawzall. I was going to use my Metabo angle grinder, but I'm fresh out of cutting blades. So I'll revert to this, and it's actually not a bad way to get metal cut. It's really efficient. It works really well. This is one of my favorite tools in the shop. It's so versatile. It cuts metal. It cuts wood. You could use this to trim your trees. It just has a lot of different uses. So I would recommend getting one of these. This is one of the very first cutting tools that I purchased, and I've had it for several years, and it's been a good piece of equipment. So I'll get my PPE on, and then we'll get to cutting this. So there it is, that easy. And you want to get it as center as possible, but it doesn't have to be 100% perfect, because what we're going to do next is we're going to put these together, and you can see that one is just slightly longer than the other. But what we want to do is we want to round these edges off. So we're going to grind these flush, then we're going to round these edges off. So I'll get the other two cut and get them laid out on the table. So you can see how I marked these two here. And they're at an angle. The marking is at an angle to compensate for the other horseshoe coming up on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp these two together, and I'm going to cut them at the same time so that they're both equally symmetrical. So you can see the difference in size between the two. Okay, everything seems to fit up pretty well. I'm going to grind these edges, and then I have to flip the whole thing over on its back side so that I can weld it from the back again like I did with the last cross. Now I'm going to switch up to my Matamo grinder to round those edges off. And if I didn't tell you already, this is probably my favorite tool in the shop. It's just a great thing to have around. It's powerful, it's strong, and I know it's going to last a lifetime. So that is 2 symmetrical pieces of a horseshoe. I rounded those edges off. You can see how they looked finished, where these don't look quite as finished with the hard jagged edge and not rounded off. So I'll get these done next. Okay, now that I've got all the pieces cut and ground to size, I'm going to flip everything over and get it ready to weld. Okay, here is the cross turned over, and this is the back side of the horseshoes. And we are going to begin welding on the back side, first tacking in place. Once it's all tacked in place, everything looks good, then I will weld it up complete. Okay, I've got this completely welded up, and now I will take the angle grinder and I'll grind all these welds flush so that again that it doesn't get snagged up on anything or so that it doesn't damage anything that it lays on. So I got this finished up just in time for some of my favorite people to come visit me. You want to come say hi to the camera? Micah, come here. Come say hi to the camera. Just come here. You don't want to come? Come here. Elijah. Oh, I put him in the wrong spot. This is my wife and my daughter. Micah and Lindsay, and my son over here, he doesn't want to get in front of the camera right now. So they just surprised me and decided to stop by in the middle of me building this next project. All right, so here it is. It's the finished deal. I just need to drill a hole up here if I'm going to hang it. I could also build a base for it, and this could be on a stand. That might be an option. I'll have to think about it and see if that's something I want to do. But either way, I think it came out nice. I'm pretty happy with it. I'll get a coat of paint on it and I will post it up for sale. So I thought about it and I decided to go ahead and mount this on a base. So I looked around the shop to see what I have, and I found this 1/4-inch plate that I have that I can cut and make a base out of it. The other thing is that when you stand this up, if I just weld this corner, it doesn't give me a lot of rigidity to make it very solid. So here are the leftover pieces from the horseshoe that I cut, and I'm going to put these to use. So I'm actually going to use these right here, and that way it'll provide the backing and the rigidity that it needs to go ahead and be a little bit more stiff, a little bit more secure. So what I got to do now is get this cut. And I'm going to do that on the horizontal bandsaw. This is my dual horizontal bandsaw, and just a little background information on it. It's got a 3/4-inch blade on it, 132 inches long. And I custom built these tables because it's difficult to get long pieces of metal or even short pieces of metal on here and get them completely straight and flat. And then whenever you have a drop off, if you don't have something to hold it in place, it can be difficult to handle and it can hurt you. So I'll just give you a look at the tables. They're pretty strong. They're probably a lot stronger than anything that you can buy, and that's the good thing about being able to make your own equipment. And I've got the base metal in there set at 12 inches, and I'm just going to cut a 12-inch section of that off, and that's what will be the base for the cross. Okay, I've got my base plate cut. I've got the cross here, and then I've got the brace pieces. So I've got everything I need to get this welded up and get this base put on here. So what I'm going to do first is tack this in place upright and then get it level and get it straight. I've already got the center of this plate marked at 6 inches and 3 inches. That gives me the direct center. So I'm going to place this right in the center of the plate, and then I'm going to tack that in place. Okay, I've got it tacked. You want just a light tack because you're going to have to maneuver this around. finished deal. It's a horseshoe cross and a base. Made completely out of scrap material. So I will post this up for sale and move on to the next project. Thanks.